dumb. Hello everyone, it's me, Pui. If you can't tell, I'm driving a car. I'm gonna record this video from my car, and it's gonna be some low quality trash, but I know you're gonna watch it anyway. And the reason why I know this is because I'm talking today about how to beat Panda Burn, which was the most requested video in the survey that I put out a little while ago. The survey did not really give me a lot of useful info, but the one thing it told me is that y'all really want this video, and I think I'm going to commit some matricide today. So we're going to kill my baby, and I'm going to tell you how to do it. So I'm going to obviously do it from the perspective of some top tier decks, just because those are what you're probably going to play, and those are probably the decks that Panda is most designed to beat in the first place. Obviously, there's like other cards you can use, and I'll talk about plenty of cards, but I'm going to talk both about potential cards you can use, both main and sideboard, as well as, you know, play patterns that you need to think about, look out for. The main thing I will tell you, the most important thing, is not a question of any card, but it is a question of play. And if you haven't figured out already, it is the most important, and if you don't do it, then every other card you have in your deck probably won't matter. And it is that you need to keep your board open. The greatest strength of Panda Burn is Ojama Trio, and how Ojama Trio imposes upon the way the game is played. It is what carried the deck for such a long time, because no matter what sideboard card was used, no matter how much burn was placed into the field, it really just stifled the game to such an extent that Panda was almost always able to end up wrestling out of it and dealing a shit ton of damage nonetheless. So, thing number one, do not play more than one Gravekeeper Spy after sighting. I know there are plenty of people who think that just because they're playing Meme Walk, which we'll talk about later, that they can play 2 Spy, or that they should play 2 Spy for their Mobius too. Do not. Don't do it. Chances are the Panda player, in a lot of situations, we'll talk about that later, will likely not attack into your sets all the time. You will have an opportunity to Meme Walk, you will have an opportunity to Mobius, you do not need to play that second Spy. If you play the single Spy, it's very good tech, because that 2000 defense wall is basically impossible for Panda to get over until they use a trio. If you play a second Spy, all of a sudden, no matter how many sideboard cards you've brought in, you've still Ojama locked yourself, and you're probably going to lose. So, beyond that, you also do not want to play more than 2 monsters until you're ready to out Ojama Trio, if it looks like they're playing Trio. Obviously, if they normal summon Panda set 1, that's a very obvious Trio. Don't attack into that, because that doesn't cause a replay, and your monster will get killed, and you'll take a lot of damage, and they'll have Trio up. Do not set into that, because it's very likely that you're going to get Ojama locked. Keep 1 monster on the board. They don't have much to do until they're actually locking you, unless you can be very proactive, or you have an answer. Possible answers include, of course, the Meme Walk. If you're playing Meme Walk, you can be on Warriors, you can be Turbo, you can be Control. It's pretty universally usable. I think it's least usable in Warrior, but I've seen people using 1 in Warrior sometimes, though usually Warrior has other tactics to use, which we can go over later as well. The thing you wanted to understand about Meme Walk is that there's people who set it and there's people who keep it in hand. The strength of Meme Walk has always been the fact that it is a quick play spell that tributes its cost. So when you're setting your Meme Walk to just like get Heavy Stormed or get Breakered or to get forced to be used early or to eliminate all the surprise of it, you are defeating the purpose. If you have another set that you can defend yourself with, I highly recommend holding that Meme Walk in hand, because Panda Burn doesn't usually play Delinquent Duo, certainly not main, and probably not in the side against whatever deck you're using that's playing Meme Walk. I usually only bring it in against Degen and Warrior, so you should want to hold that Meme Walk in your hand unless you don't have anything else to set. Also note that if you Meme Walk a Ojama token or whatever else during an attack, that's going to cause a replay. So you can't like protect from a Panda attack. You can just gain a couple of life and decrease the Panda. But that's something to note both for a Panda opponent or a Panda player, that does trigger a replay, because you're removing a monster from the defending player's field. Second up, a great way to remove Ojama tokens is Regeki Break. If you are worried about Panda and you are not good at the matchup, you should always be playing Regeki Break over Quib. In any deck where you could be playing Phoenix Wing or Regeki Break, play the Break. If you're playing a mix of them, play more Breaks than Quibs, because it's important. Break is a really good card. Most of the time when I'm playing Panda, certainly in the earlier days, I was praying my opponent didn't have Break. In most situations, I'm going to do this play, I hope they don't have Break, because if they break X card, this whole thing's going to fall apart, and I will be out in the open. Break is really good at, no pun intended, breaking down Panda players' plans. Even when it puts you in a minus, you can generally thwart their plans so thoroughly the minus does not matter. Don't worry too much about card advantage when it comes to playing against Panda, especially not during Monster, because Panda Burn's best weapon with that Ojama lock and with their floodgates is time. So they will give you more cards back later. You don't need the ones you're throwing away now. But if you can simplify that board state and thwart them, Raigeki Break usually always does that, and it will always put you in a better position. The next most used card is, of course, Mobius, or any other thing that tributes monsters. So tribute monsters are really good. Mobius and Jinzo are particularly incredibly strong. This is nothing new. It removes a monster from the field, which is a very difficult to anticipate move for the Panda player unless they're really good, really looking out for it. And it forces them to have to start destroying your monsters to not, just die. Jinzo is especially backbreaking, but I know it's not good in a lot of matchups. I think that with Panda being, the tier 1 deck it is now, it might be worth considering Jinzo, even though it's not as good as before. And it's not as good as before because of chain energy. So we do need to talk about chain energy. The second greatest strength of Panda Burn now is definitely that chain energy. Perhaps it's the first and the Ojama lock is the second, because chain energy just changed the game that much. They can play it turn 1. It is not a trap. It doesn't care about the Ojamas. It forces you to use your removal too early, which then they can floodgate you later, and it punishes you for basically playing the game. If I go first and I play a chain energy, all of a sudden a turbo sack is basically a reverse sack, because now instead of you having a hand and it being super huge and having every answer you want, you now are losing 2,500 life points or something, right? If you want to go pot, grace, upstart, Thunder Dragon, if you want to do all that stuff, it now costs 500 each, and you just have to lose all that life just to even start playing the game. So thing number 1, always remove it as soon as possible. Just get rid of it. If they have that and another card, maybe even a floodgate, get rid of the chain energy first, because you can keep playing the game if they have a floodgate up. You can't keep playing the game if they have chain energy up and your life gets too low. As a Panda player, my absolute favorite thing I've been doing these days is getting my opponent below 500 life or at 500 life, dropping a chain energy and just saying GG. I think it's so satisfying. If you haven't been playing Panda, I highly recommend you do that. It's just really funny. I just like making people upset, honestly. But you don't want to be that as the Panda opponent. You don't want to be in that situation. So it's imperative you get rid of chain energy. However, don't slam heavy turn 1 if they just do chain energy in a set, because that set is almost certainly a chainable, and those 2 cards are almost certainly bait to make you get rid of your heavy early. Panda players are certainly thinking of the game in terms of pre and post heavy storm. And once they're in post heavy storm version of the game, it is way easier to win. They don't have to keep being conservative. They can unga bunga all day long, and the only thing they have to worry about is using faith on heavy when they're not ready to kill you, which they probably are ready to kill you by the time that happens. And Panda loves eating a faith, especially if it's an obvious faith and they have Ojama. That's going to be a lot of damage. You might not even make it that long. So make sure you're conservative with your heavy. But for example, if you have a breaker, right? If you have a breaker and they have a set and they have a chain energy, even if that set ends up being Nightmare Wheel on the breaker, do not destroy the Nightmare Wheel. Destroy the chain energy first. So moving on to some other considerations that you want to have. Very, very, very important that you save that storm for a time where it's actually going to devastate. Note that Creature Swap is very good because they're always giving you fodder for that. If you haven't been using Creature Swap, it can be pretty great in your control deck, for example. Very important to note that 2 not effective tactics, and I'm sure a lot of people have picked up on this, are Wombat and Decree, especially together. Let's take a look at these alone, right? If you have Decree alone is fine and will shut them down until you True Nade. If you're playing Decree, then you're not playing traps that stop a True Nade. You're also not even playing a chainable trap that can make the fact that your Decree has been True Naded not an issue. They'll just wait for a True Nade, they'll pick up all their traps, they'll put their traps back down, and then they will flip them and you will die. They only need 1 turn to do that. Similarly, Wombat. This Wombat just gets hit over. There are situations where Wombat can be good, and those situations are Wombats with traps. I don't think Wombat is great, but an example of this was AJT, did the Wombat Turbo. I think he won his last FLC, which is terrifying to say. I just looked this morning, and AJT is won his second FLC, so that makes him AJT BLS FLC X2. What a string of characters that was. But anyway, yeah, you don't want to use Wombat with Decree, because Decree stops you from being able to protect your Wombat. So then I just wait for there to be a second monster or trio on the field, and then I just attack with Panda over your guy, and then it's gone. And then I just go back to plan A, which is Trunade or Decree, and kill you. And when you're playing those cards against Panda, it's not proactive enough that you are, not giving them time to do that. You've played Decree and a 1600 beater instead of cards that kill them. So you've given them plenty of time. I find, for example, if you're playing Chaos Control, Balter and Decree, like playing the Answer, way better. That usually shuts Panda completely down, because now you can't use Rat, you can't use Cyber Jar, Morphing Jar, you can't use Trunade to get rid of Decree, etc., etc. So the only answers are, like, if they're playing Book of Moon, which most of the Chain Energy Pandas aren't. They have Book of Moon, they have Exiled Force, they have Injection Fairy Lily if their life isn't too low. They have Level Limit Area B, which is Panda's best tool against Chaos Control, certainly the CC Decree at least. And they also have, Panda plus Ojamas. That's basically it. It's a very, very small list of things they can do. So, Balter Decree over Wombat Decree, Wombat plus Traps over Wombat Decree. Those are the best implementations of those two cards. Don't put them together. So the final consideration is that Panda will probably stop being Panda Games 2 and Game 3. This is something I helped pioneer, Viper's done, Birdman's done, also KL did it plenty. KL's how I got to learn to do it too. But Panda most likely will try to do some sort of beatdown strategy in Game 2 or even Game 3 as well, because there are cards that can kind of silver bullet the burn and stall stuff a little more. With the implementation of Chain Energy, it is less likely than before. There was a perception at a time where Panda had to do this because the cards will get silver bullet it, and it had to switch. But if you were siding only for Panda Burn, the way that Panda Burn presents itself Game 1 with the Ojama stall, the Rat crashes, the burn traps, the trio, and the Chain E, you're probably going to side wrong, because they're going to try to beat you down. They might have Mobius, Kaiku, almost definitely they'll have Nobleman of Cross out. They'll probably have Mind Control as well, Brain Control. They might bring in their own Death Wombat. They might go Cat combo. They might use their own creature swaps. There's plenty of things that Panda can do to stop being what it is, because at its core, it is a giant rat aggro deck, and that gives it a lot of flexibility. I've even seen people do Panda Warrior. I've tried this myself. It works pretty well. So keep in mind that you're going to need to be able to hose attacks as well, basically. You're going to want your Sakus. Dust Tornado can work well. Keep those Rigeki breaks in. Just always keep them in. They're great. Speaking of Saku and Dust Shoot, let's talk about Warrior. For the Warrior matchup, obviously the side that people have been doing has been working pretty well. So that's some combination of Wang Hu, Mobius, and Cliff. If you notice that Wang Hu and Cliff have a non-bow, you ignore that and you do it anyway. Because of how Panda plays against Warrior, right? It's trying to draw out the game and get some combination of Trunade, Panda, and just desserts. You will see all of your cards, and they will have to kill the Wang Hu in order to win. So it's very likely you will have an opportunity to see both cards and an implementation moment for both. You can use your Wang Hu early, then that Wang Hu will die, you can pressure with Cliff, then you can even, torrential, and then use another Wang Hu later in the late game. You will have a space to do both. You also have Mobius, hopefully, 2 Mobius, usually, that can help you get rid of the Wang Hu if you need, and then you can play in Cliff as well. But there's plenty of things. And then all of these have implementation in other matchups. So, in a way, Warrior has started siding basically purely for Warrior and Burn, with cards that incidentally help in other matchups while having a decent game 1 against Turbo. But you can play the Meanwalk if you'd like, but I'd say the musts are, 2 to 3 Wang Hu, 1 Cliff, 2 Mobius. Obviously, you want to be playing 3 Dust Tornado in the 75, or in the 55 of your Warrior deck. Not just for Panda, but also for other Warrior decks, and even against the Jar Turbos, it's useful, or against stall decks, or anything of the like. Just, you have your Dust Tornadoes on hand. Plenty of other decks can also use Dust Tornado as well. So Warrior siding against Panda Burn is very different, because the way that Panda reacts to Warrior strategy is different than how it reacts to other strategies. The beatdown strategy may or may not be implemented against Warrior, or the Panda player may or may not just stall even harder, which of course is going to hurt Warrior differently than it hurts other decks, and so Warrior will need to use different tools to break through, mainly the Mobius and the Glyph. And then the Wanko just makes sure that the Ojama Trio doesn't work. The very, very last thing I'll talk about is the actual best decks to play against Panda Burn are other Trunade decks, specifically Empty Jar and Reasoning Gate. If you are playing in paper and you're playing Library, because you can play Library, first of all, go fuck yourself. And second of all, don't play Library against Panda, because Panda has some incidental hate tools against Library. So if you're playing the Toon Cannon Soldier version, or whatever it is, that'll work, because you contribute the Ojamas. But if you're playing the classic version, you're blocked by both Des Wombat and by Ojama Trio, just like incidentally. And if those don't hurt you or make your combo harder to do, because you can play around them, but it's hard, then burning you for as much as they can in the early game might, because it might just block how many draws you can get with your Archfiend Oath, and you might just brick. However, Empty Jar and Reasoning Gate are a much different story. Empty Jar has just so many ways that it doesn't get interacted with at all, because Panda interacts purely with a lot of like gumming up and battle removal. Empty Jar has no plan ever to like summon more than 2 monsters, right? Maybe there's like 1 Tomato or Sangan on the field at a time, maybe 2 if you ignored the first set and they set a second, but that's it. So the Ojama Trio is never gumming up their board. They're never even trying to attack beyond crashing to find their stuff, which of course your main attacker, Giant Rat, is also 14, so they can bounce off those and easily search their jar. At the same time, Panda isn't playing any Dust Shoots, it isn't playing any Solemns, it isn't playing any Regeki Break. Not even all of them are playing Ceasefire anymore, which Ceasefire is like the only good interaction Panda Burn really had. That and burning, you know, the ever-living shit out of the Empty Jar player all in one turn, which happens very rarely. And then on top of that, they're playing their own jars in Game 1, and sometimes even in Game 2. And that just means that the E-Jar player can mind control or Book of Taiyu the opponent's jar, even attack the jar, and just start their combo with the Panda player's jar. So E-Jar, incredibly good matchup. As for Reasoning Gate, it's not as hilariously good, but it is quite good. Monster Gate, it just is another way to get rid of tokens, and it also, Trio just enables the Monster Gate without you having to use your own monsters, which is fantastic. You have Trunade to get rid of their Floodgates. Try as I might, I can't convince any Panda players to use Threatening Roar, even though Panda Burn is also weak to Threatening Roar on its own, and Cat is weak to Threatening Roar, and both of those decks could come back at any moment. Reasoning Gate can come back at any moment, but they don't do it. So if you play a Trunade as Reasoning Gate, generally the board is yours. If they chain their trio like a fool, you just start using that with Monster Gate, and you can just make this giant board before they have much of a chance to do anything. Keep into consideration that they have Cyberjar, which can hose your entire board, so be careful of that. Keep into consideration that they might have Rat, so don't just attack into face down. If they have an answer for a face down before you try to go off, but they won't do anything about whatever your answer is, so just find it. Be careful when you use Scapegoats in the game, because if you're not careful, they're just going to Panda you to death and use Burn on you to death. You know, Scapegoat is dangerous against Panda Burn. It's just a thing. Try to find Jinzo as soon as you can. Jinzo just shuts down the matchup pretty easily. And make sure that if they have a set card and you have 3 trio tokens and nothing else, never use Monster Gate there. Because if they chain a second trio, you both lose your Monster Gate and you're now Ojama locked, and the game's probably over. Beyond that, it's pretty easy for Reasoning Gate to completely romp over Panda Burn in several ways once they resolve a Trunade, or once they resolve in Game 2 a Royal Decree or a Jinzo or a Bolt or anything like that. So those matchups are the best. That's all I have to say for today. I hope you enjoyed car video. I'm making this video because I think Panda is proved in itself a tier 1 deck. And I think that all these play tips and card considerations are quite useful for players, but aren't like the end-all be-all. The same way that I could talk to you for 20 minutes on how to beat Chaos Turbo, and you're not going to beat it every time at the end. It's not a deck with a single weakness. It's not a deck that can just get hosed by a certain combination of cards without getting beaten by other decks in the meta if you overside, which I think is very definitionally a tier 1 deck. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm going to be making some of the more of the videos that I mentioned in the survey and some bonus stuff. I think I might have a collab coming up, so that'll be cool. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was helpful, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.